Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is J, and today I'm going to be showing you 6 unique builds that I will be taking with me into the Elden Ring DLC. These 6 builds are 2 Faith builds, 1 Intelligence build, 1 Arcane build, 1 Strength build, and 1 Dexterity build. Starting off, first we have my first Faith build. One thing to note is that with all of these builds that I'm showing, they're not really designed with optimization of damage in mind. All these builds are just builds that I find fun to use, right? Whether it's a weapon that I think is cool, or an incantation or spell that I want to use, that is my main focus for all of these builds. To mainly have a good time with cool weapons while playing through the game. So starting off, this is the first Faith build I have. As you can see, it's 55 Faith, 40 and 45 Strength and Dexterity. It is a level 180 build, so I do have a lot of skill points to spare, and you can, assign them to your Vigor, Mind, and Endurance, however you wish. But the main theme of this build is using the final boss weapons as my main weapons for DLC. And of course, for fashion, I'm rocking the iconic Raging Wolf set. So, first of all, we have the Sacred Relic Greatsword, aka the Albinord Genocider 9000. If you've seen this farming spot before, you know exactly how useful this weapon is for farming. Then we have Marika's Great Hammer, which just has a really cool attack. And of course, because it is a Faith build, I do have a seal that I use for various incantations, both offensive and defensive. First, I have Golden Valve, which is just a really good buff for your attack power. It does last a pretty decent amount of time. Then I have the Frozen Lightning Spear. So if I ever want to do frostbite damage, I can always whip out one of these, and it has a pretty good area of effect. Next up, I have Malekith's Blackblade, which is a really cool looking projectile attack. It also does whittle down the enemy's health bar. As you can see, it permanently lowers, sorry, not permanently, but temporarily reduces their total health bar. So this is really good against PvP, whether it's against other players or NPC invaders. Next up, we have Elden Stars, which isn't really an optional attack, but again, I just have this because it's final boss spell, and it is really cool. And then finally, we have probably the most powerful dragon spell in the game, which is Placidu's Ring. Doesn't really work too well on sloped areas, but if you're on a flat place and you have a whole bunch of enemies swarming you, that is a really good choice to completely chop down every enemy. You could also just use the Asher Ford or Sacred Relic Sword. That'll do much better, especially on sloped areas. But yeah, that's it for this build. Talismans, you can really put whatever you want. It's not really that important. And then for the physic, also you can just put whatever you want. Not that important. But yeah, this build is mainly just the final boss build with a bunch of cool incantations to go with the build. That's really it for this one. On to the next Faith build. Next up, we have the Golden Mask cosplay build. Gold Mask cosplay build. And this one's pretty straightforward. It mainly relies on Golden Order incantations. My main weapon is the Sword of Night and Flame. The reason why I chose this is because it scales both on intelligence and faith, and a lot of the Golden Order incantations require both intelligence and faith. So as you can see, my intelligence is 37, my faith is 57, and then the remaining skill points you can assign as you please. Sword of Night and Flame is a really good weapon. You know, if you've kept in touch with the Elden Ring PvP area during the initial stages of the game, you will know how overpowered this weapon used to be. And even though it's not as insane as it was when the game first released, it is still very powerful. So as you can see, if you do the stance and you do heavy attack, you do fire damage, pretty good AoE attack. And if you do the stance and then light attack, you do common as well. For the incantation, which is the main draw of this build, we have Discus of Light. Doesn't take a lot of FP and has a very long range. Goes and comes back, so it deals damage twice. Then we have the Triple Rings of Light, which is 3 rings of light. Wrath of Gold, which is a pretty good get off me incantation. You know, if you have a bunch of enemies, you can only just pop one of these, and you can charge it up to increase the area of effect. The main downside to this build in general, though, is that if you are going to rock the gold mask fashion, you are going to have very little poise. As you can see on the right, my poise is only 16. So you can change this to whatever you want, as long as you keep the mask the same. The reason why I want to keep the mask is because this mask strengthens Golden Order incantations. Anyway, back to the incantations I have. We use Wrath of Gold. I also have Radagon Rings of Light, which is a really good AoE that can also be charged up. It is a bit slow. It's not really that efficient in the heat of combat, but you know, if you come across a group of enemies, you can sneak up to them and use the Rings of Light. Then we have Elden Stars, which again, not really optimal, but it's a pretty cool spell to use. Then we have Golden Vow, which is really good buff. Black Flame's Protection, which reduces physical damage that you take, which complements the reduced poise damage that you have if you are going to rock this fashion. And then you have Blessing of the Erdtree, pretty good health regeneration spell, followed by Lord's Divine Fortification, reduces the amount of ailment and status builds up you get. I think that's what it does, not too sure, but it's good to have. And yeah, the most important thing is that the seal that I use is the Golden Order seal, scales on both intelligence and faith, and it boosts fundamentalist incantations, so your Rings of Light, Triple Rings of Light, those type of spells. And then I have a shield just in case, but not really necessary. And yeah, that is really it for this build. The T-pose is necessary. So yeah, that's it for this one. On to the next build. Next up, we have the Arcane build. This is my Blood Ronin build, and the main draw of this build is using these two twin blades, the Eleonora's Pole Blade and the Godskin Peeler, which we infuse with either Blood Infusion or Occult. And for the Godskin Peeler, I use Seppuku to increase the amount of blood loss during a 5v1 enemy. The two most important talismans that you should use for this build is the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which increases attack power when you bleed an enemy, and the Winged Sword Insignia. You can use the Rotten one or the regular one, or Millicent's Prosthesis if you are a monster and you killed her. And what this does is it increases the attack power with successive attacks, which goes hand in hand with the dual-wielding Twin Blade, because these do successive attacks really, really quick. And of course, the main damage source of this build is bleed damage. Now, even if the enemy you're fighting isn't bleedable, having your Godskin Peeler be occult infused allows you to convert the arcane damage into raw physical damage. So that way you're not completely helpless against an enemy that does not bleed. But yeah, just to showcase, just to showcase the insane damage you can do. look how fast we whittle down our health. And all it takes is a little L1 spam to build up that bleed damage, which will increase our attack power, and then the successive attacks from the L1 spam also increases our attack power. And yeah, I do have a seal, but I don't really have much spells and incantations that I use. I do have Seal Vitality, which is pretty good health regen. Flame grant me strength if I want to do an insane burst of damage. Swarm of Flies, which will track an enemy you're targeting and build up blood loss. This is really good against human enemies like NPC invaders and whatnot. Blood Flame Talons, I don't really use it too much. I just have it for the cool factor. You know, it fits the Blood Flame build I'm going for. Same thing with the Blood Boom. Not really that insane when fighting NPCs, but it does pretty good fire damage. You know, especially if you throw it up close. It creates this huge blob of blood loss and fire. Then, because it is arcane, I use Flame of Frenzy, which should build up madness very quickly on human enemies. I think those are the only enemies in the game that can be inflicted with madness. Especially during tight corridors where enemies can't escape by running to the side. And then I just have a bunch of healing spells to complement the health loss that comes with using. And yeah, this build is pretty straightforward, nothing much to it. It's all about DL1 spam, getting that attack power boost from blood loss and successive attacks. And of course, you can always spam Blood Blade Dance, my bad, which also builds up successive attack, blood loss, and it is really good at breaking an enemy's stance if you spam it enough. So yeah, that's it for this build. Pretty simple. And of course, your fashion can be whatever you want. I like how this looks. That's it for this build. On to the next one. Next up, we have the Carrion Knight Intelligence build. For this build, I am rocking 2 magic greatswords. The Carrion Regal Scepter, which is the one you get from Renala's Remembrance. I use it because it has pretty high sorcery scaling and high intelligence. And then the Carrion Knight Shield, and then the Carrion Knight Helmet and chest piece, just to fit the aesthetic. So the reason why I chose these 2 greatswords is because they both can be buffed with their Ash of War to do increased magic damage. And of course I have the Moonlight Greatsword on my right hand to use the projectile that comes from a heavy attack, which does really good frostbite buildup, and it is a good ranged option. And yeah, when you combine the buffs of these 2 weapons, you can do some pretty insane damage. Okay, this is a bit embarrassing. So as you can see, sometimes the great swords can be a bit too slow, which is why I switched to the staff, and I have Carrion Slicer as my main spell. And that is because it is quick, it takes less FP to use, very little FP, and yeah, it's just a really good quick option should the great swords be a bit too slow. So continuing with the spells, I also have Carrion Piercer, which has really good range. Then I have Rock Sling, which I think is a must-have for all intelligence builds. And that is because 1, it does physical damage, and 2, it does really good poise damage. So you can break an enemy's stance really easily, and then use your greatsword to go in for a killing blow. Then I have Rani's Dark Boon, which is a pretty good explosion attack. The main use for this spell is that enemies that are hit by it, that still live, end up taking more damage. I don't really take more general damage, or more magic damage specifically. But either way, since you're a magic build, it wouldn't matter. And yeah, this is a pretty good spell to just throw out there when you first encounter an enemy with a large health bar. And then of course we have the iconic dual spell combo that any high level mage should have, which is a Terra Magica and a Common Reserve combo, which combined with these two tiers specifically for the Physic, the Cerulean Hidden tier, and the Magic Shroud and Crack tier, this will boost your damage by an insane amount because this tier gives you unlimited FP and this tier increases your magic damage. So let's say there's an enemy with a huge hitbox that is really slow, doesn't really dodge out of the way. What you do is you cast your Terra Magica, drink your Physic, and immediately use Common. And what this does is that the Terra Magica increases your magic damage, and the physic that you drink increases your magic damage even more, and gives you unlimited FP for a period of time, which allows you to keep spamming Common Reserve for a long period of time. And that can easily delete an entire chunk of an enemy's health bar, if not outright kill them. And that is, of course, if the enemy takes it all and doesn't dodge out of the way. But yeah, that's really it for this build. Talismans, any talisman you think suits the build well. And for the drip, the Carrion Knight, I just really love how this armor looks. But the main draw of this build are these two great swords and the Carrion Regal Scepter. So that's it for this build. On to the next one. Next up, we have the Strength build, which is basically a Godfrey cosplay. So I have the Axe of Godfrey, the Elden Lord armor set, hand and legs can be anything you want. And then I have the Jar Cannon, which I will get into in a second. But yeah, this is the Godfrey cosplay using the Godfrey's axe. Pretty good colossal axe. Bit slow, but not incredibly slow. You can still get some pretty good damage off of it. And the Ash of War of this weapon is a battle cry that changes the heavy attack. So, as you can see, the Ash of War itself does a good AoE. And the new heavy attack is a Stomp and a Strike. And a Stomp can easily stagger enemies. So we can try it on this guy. The axe does pretty good damage. And then when it comes to incantations, and then we have an insane amount of spells. It's just mainly buffs. So as you can see, I have Flame Grant Me Strength to increase the amount of burst damage you do from, like, per se, a jump attack or a charge heavy attack. Then I have Bestial Vitality, good health regen. And then Divine Fortification. You can switch this with any, damage reducing incantation you want. I just had this one equipped because I recently beat the Radagon Elden Beast fight. So I use this to reduce the amount of holy damage I took. And then of course, I have the Jar Cannon. Now why do I have the Jar Cannon? Just because it's pretty fun to use. It does suit the strength build. You have a huge axe, and then you carry a huge jar cannon, which you can use to completely obliterate enemies. And yeah, it's just a really fun weapon to use. There's not really much to say about this build. It's your standard, typical, big weapon, go big boss build. If sometimes the axe is a bit too slow, depending on the enemy you fight, I do like to switch to the Flamebird, however you say it. This is my favorite weapon in Dark Souls 3 and in Elden Ring, and that's because it's a sword which has innate blood loss, and I just really like how it looks. And because it's called a Flamebird, I equipped the Flaming Strike Ash of War to give it a fiery attack. And yeah, if the axe is a bit too slow, I can always switch to this weapon for some quicker swings. And yeah, I mean, there's not really much to it. It is a strength build. It's all about hitting enemies with a big weapon. That's really it. So on to the next build. And for the final build in this video, it is the martial arts Kung Fu Lightning build. So as you can see, I have lightning, spiked Gestus, however you say it, spiked fists, which I also infuse with lightning. I chose it because it does blood loss buildup, and it's a really good fist weapon. You know, it makes it look like you're just boxing the absolute crap out of every enemy you fight. Thing is, this build is incomplete. The reason why I made this build is because I wanted to combine this with the kicking weapon that comes in the DLC, you know? Because my main inspiration for this build was the song, you know, everybody was Kung Fu fighting. Da -da 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 -da. Those kicks were fast as lightning. And so I inspired this whole build based on that one line. So my main goal is to get the kick weapon and infuse it with lightning, so I can kick the crap, literally, out of every enemy in the DLC. And I want to specifically use lightning kicks. So yeah, this weapon is all about pummeling your enemies to death. I do have the winged sword insignia. You can use the rotting one or the regular one to increase attack power with successive attacks, which you will be doing a lot of successive attacks with the kicks and the kick weapon. As you can see, you barely give your enemies any time to react. And you know, if an enemy does manage to poise through your fist attacks, I equipped the Endure Ash of War to significantly increase your poise temporarily. And yeah, as you can see, it just completely bullies all these standard enemies. They can't even react to your attacks. And yeah, I do have a seal. I don't really have much incantations. I just have healing spells. So I can Cleanse Me, which will clear you of poison or scalded rock. I have Stone of Garank, Rock Sling, which is currently my only range option for now. But again, the aim of this build is to get it straight into an enemy's face and pummel them. Then I also have Bestial Vitality for health regeneration. And that's really it. This build is all about successive attacks and not giving your enemy a chance to respond. And if you are fighting a larger enemy, the blood loss from the spiked fists will really help to chop down their health bar. And yeah, I mean, that's really it. Again, like I said, this build is incomplete. And this is the build that I plan to take to my first playthrough, because I just really like the idea of using the kick weapon in a Dark Souls type of game. So yeah, that's it. Oh, he's still alive. There we go. That's really all I have for today. These are the builds that I plan to use into the DLC. So if you like these builds and you are inspired by them, hit the like button just to show that you appreciate this video. Again, like I said in the beginning, all of these builds aren't made with optimization in mind. So if you do have any ideas on how to optimize the damage for any of these builds, you can comment down below. Or if you have any unique build ideas of your own, you can also comment that down below. I don't know what's wrong with my voice today. But yeah, that's really it. If you want to tune in to my playthrough of the Elden Ring DLC, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification to be notified of when my videos drop. And yeah, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.